Hello and welcome to episode 117 of the Clean Energy Show. I'm Brian Stockton.
I'm James Whittingham. This week, the 2023 Chevrolet Bolt all-electric vehicle gets a massive price cut again. Hell, I might buy two.
Mazda has vowed to make its factories carbon neutral by 2035 while still producing combustion vehicles. I predict their carbon emissions will drop to zero because they'll be out of business.
Fake meat sales have plateaued, much to the delight of rednecks everywhere. Cows and pigs, not so happy.
Joe Biden makes big moves to support the U.S. solar industry, but critics say he only supports solar because he looks so great in those aviator sunglasses.
All that and so much more on this exciting edition of the Clean Energy Show.
So I just realized something, James. I bit my tongue earlier today, and I think it's affecting my speech. I might sound a little funny.
Okay, so it's not a stroke, and you haven't been drinking.
It could be both of those things, but...
Although you have to admit, that's a pretty good excuse if you had been drinking and or had a stroke.
Yeah.
That saying I bit my tongue earlier, I'm going to use that when the time comes. Brian... podcasting is almost 20 years old, as you know. It goes back to around 2003.
Yes.
And I was there. I was an early guy.
You were one of Canada's pioneering podcasters.
It was a show called James Pod, and I gave up on it.
Because you were in too early.
I know, I'm in too early and everything. I gave up on YouTube just before they monetized people, because they didn't monetize me in the first round, and I got mad and left. And then, a month later, I might have been, rich. Talking to you from my skyscraper, my personally owned skyscraper by now. But podcasting goes back 20 years. We are a podcast, a proud podcast. And I've developed an innovation, Brian, for the Clean Energy Show that has never been used on a podcast before. This is technology beyond the pale. This is something that you have never considered before. I have placed at great expense and great effort a microphone outside my house.
Wow.
And I will now attempt to bring up the levels on said microphone. I ask you to be cautious and start waving if you think that I should call it off at any point, but here we go. No one is home today, so anything we hear will not be from my household, but it is from the neighborhood here in North Regina, Saskatchewan, Canada. I'm bringing up the microphone now. I'm starting to hear ambience outdoors. Hearing some birds chirping. And this is live audio now on the Clean Energy Show from outside my house. One might even think that I'm outside broadcasting on this beautiful June day, but I am not. Here we are. And I think I can hear, if you listen carefully, there's a rumble of the refinery in the distance, perhaps. You occasionally, because there's an east wind today, I hear the rumbling. I don't know why it rumbles, but there's a little. I'm going to take off the low cutoff now, see if we can get. Oh, what's that? Oh, it's a motorcycle. You hear that?
Slightly.
I've taken off the low rumble. No. So the refinery plane goes over. The pipeline plane goes over. I'll certainly tune into that live because it's due today. This is the airplane that flies at low altitude over the pipeline that goes adjacent to my house. And, it's annoying. But it's to keep me alive. They only do it where it's populated. So to look for leaks on a daily basis, pretty much. And so we have a live microphone outside the house. And to stick with audio, Brian, I'm very happy to announce, as I keep the outdoor mic just in the background for I see here a train. It's interesting. So I've solved my Atmos problem, Brian. I'm so happy.
Wow.
I bought speakers. I bought open box speakers. The first time I've done that on Best Buy. Where they say it was $100 off. It was a third off, 1/3 of the price of the Atmos speakers. Now, these can be used to point at their ceiling and reflect. Those are not recommended. I've done a deep dive into this stuff now. You can ask me anything about Atmos, and I will know some of it. By the way, I took a tour of somebody's home theater the other day on YouTube, and I swear it's got to be, there's components that have to be worth more than my house that are in his home theater. Like, it's just crazy.
Yeah, some of them are crazy.
I don't even think I would do that, because the only time you use that room is to watch a movie. So it's a small percentage of your time, no matter how much of a movie buff you are. It has to be a multi-purpose room. I'm sorry. It has to be, a room that you can use just for socializing.
Well, director Paul Thomas Anderson, one of my favorite directors who did Boogie Nights and films like that, he's got apparently 35 millimeter and 70 millimeter projection in his house.
Wow. That's extreme.
It's a little excessive.
Yeah. Wow. Why not just buy a movie theater downtown somewhere and, just own it? Because it would cost about the same amount of money, I think, practically. You can make money off the external theater.
Now, I have a question about the microphone that you installed outdoors.
Absolutely.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but normally when you record a podcast, you're trying to keep out the sounds of the outside world.
Yes, this is the rebellious nature of what I'm doing, Brian. Don't you see? It's groundbreaking. Groundbreaking.
Is that what it is? Oh, yeah,
yes,
okay.
It's groundbreaking. I can bring in the sounds now of outside my house, and we still hear the birds chirping, and some traffic in the distance, and perhaps a little refinery.
Well, if we can hear this in Dolby Atmos someday, then you got something.
Yes. Well, when the podcast goes to Atmos, it will be. Anyway, in lieu of top speakers and drilling a hole in my ceiling in my living room, I put these angled speakers up about the same position where they would normally go, just two of them, so they'd be considered top front, slightly ahead of the listening position. I put them on the edge walls, which aren't too terribly far away from the seats, to make it, a moot point. And boy, what a difference it makes. Like, it's like I had the ambience, the essence of Atmos before, but now I've got almost the full thing. I'm like 95% at least to what a normal Atmos, basic Atmos setup should sound like. And we watched Stranger Things, which is now, like I said last week, it's the new season is in Atmos, the first season that they've done the audio mix in that. And if you're wondering, Atmos, and I know you are, it's not surround sound, it's beyond that. It's spatial. So no matter where your speakers are, it still places, no matter what your configuration, it doesn't send it to a certain speaker, it sends it to a certain point in your room. So it sort of places it in a 3D space between you and between behind you and the television. And it's just, music is cool. And like even watching a baseball game, which is not in Atmos, but the receiver will sort of process it as such.
Yeah, fake Atmos, yeah.
You get the sort of ambience. It's like a hockey game or anything like that, the sporting event where the crowd's all around you. Well, it's even more, twice as much now, I would say. So it's really cool and really worth the money. I'm really glad I did it. And my wife isn't too mad at the extra speakers. Although I've taken two speakers out which were at the front of the room and weren't doing very much, and now they're at the sides. And if I hide the wire, I'm a safe person. So, and she likes it. She notices it too and likes it. And it's been. And by the way, I highly recommend Stranger Things season. It's very good. It's the best.
Yeah,
season.
I watched it too. It was a lot of fun.
Some of the episodes are as long as the film you made.
No longer. Yeah, the last episode, like 100 minutes.
So it was like a normal feature film, a longer feature film. So we have to wait until early July to get the last two. So it was lots of fun. So much more content is coming that way, through Disney Plus especially, and Netflix, and especially a lot of their shows, their original content is going that way. So I really enjoy it, and I'm just happy. That's all I got to say. I'm just happy. So let's, one more check in the outdoor audio. Some birds. I don't have a lot of birds this year, Brian.
Interesting.
I think one of my trees is dying, and they're just saying, screw him, going elsewhere.
Do you have bird feeders?
No, because the mice got into the bird feeders, and then a couple got into the house, and I said, it's not worth it. So, and plus my neighbor had a cat which was eating them, and I thought, I'm just baiting the birds to get eaten, and I don't want to do that.
All right, so my big news this week, we've been talking about this for ages and ages, but the Tesla full self-driving beta, it came to Canada a while ago. I've been waiting patiently for it. And
years, Brian, years. You've been waiting for years. Literally, I've been waiting for years. Since the day one of this podcast, I've been waiting. We've been counting the seconds until this day.
But I think it was maybe a year and a half ago that I paid for it. But yeah, so I finally got it this week.
And you paid the 10 grand, which is, it's going up and up because they assume that it will get, worse and worse in price.
Yeah.
Because this would be more valuable. They figure, well, Musk says $100,000.
Yeah,
that'd be worth
I wanted
that.
to buy it before the price went up any further, but I was kind of expecting it sooner than this. But whatever, it's finally here. I've only had a couple of small, short drives. You and I should probably go for a drive to kind of test it out and shoot some video clips or something.
We could do that for next week's show. We can record me going for a drive. I'm kind of interested. I'm very interested. But what is it like? Okay, the first time you did it, you engage it. Do you have to program in a destination?
Yeah, I just put in like the address of a restaurant not too far away.
Were you actually going to the restaurant?
No, just somewhere to go.
Somewhere that you've gone before and that you're familiar with. Okay.
Yeah, and engaged it right outside of my house. I'm on a kind of a small little street. It took that first right turn and I was like, wow, this is amazing. This is so freaky and weird. And then it had to take an unprotected left turn right after that. That's a little bit scarier.
Were you sweating? You had beads of sweat on your forehead, or what are we talking about here?
A big smile at the time, but and it had to do that thing where it creeps forward a little bit because it can't quite see.
Yeah. And
then it just took off way faster
once it
than
had the go ahead, it was committed.
Yeah, it was gone.
So you had to be ready.
But then within 5 seconds, I had to disengage because there'd been some road construction. And basically the world's largest pothole was just in the middle of the street. The whole side, the whole lane was this leftover road construction that was filled in with gravel. And it was about to hit that at full speed. So I disengaged pretty much right away and kind of drove around that.
There was no chance that it was going to avoid it at the last second. You weren't
I don't think so, no.
Really?
Because that would have meant, swerving into the other lane of traffic, which I don't think it would have done.
Were there pylons?
No, there were no pylons.
There's no pylons.
It was just an open pit. Like it's,
Well, the open pits aren't a good thing, city here. They should tell the workers to maybe look at that.
It is indicative of how terrible our roads are around here, which does affect full self-driving. So the next thing that happened, it took another left turn to go on to Hillsdale Street, which is kind of a large boulevard type street, 2 lanes of traffic in each way with a median in the middle. But, the dotted line down the center to separate the lanes, that went away years ago and they've never bothered to repaint it. I think that, our weather conditions do affect the lines on the road. I think we they wear out here faster than they do other places.
Well, people drive in the wrong part of the road when it's winter and you can't see. So your tires are right over those line markings and they go, I think that's one of the reasons. Yeah.
So in the winter, you do end up kind of driving between the 2 lanes because that's where the ruts of the snow ends up being. But so in that case and in other cases, like the car was definitely confused. It would sort of change its mind. So it sort of started out on the left-hand side, but there was no line. So it just sort of drifted over to the middle, like ended up driving in the middle between the 2 lanes. But there's also cars parked. So it's sort of like there's 2.5 lanes there. So it's kind of confusing.
Did it stay where it was supposed to? And by the way, I'm going to bring up just a little bit of outdoor audio here just to give the ambience of you driving.
Yeah, it sets the scene.
Live audio. Did it go back and forth? Did it dodge around?
It kind of went back and forth, and I got self-conscious right away, and I disengaged it because, it's anyone looking at me would have thought I was a drunk driver or possibly having a stroke or something.
But you would have bitten your tongue.
Yeah, and then the same thing, like making a couple of the turns, it was the same kind of thing. Like it would kind of change its mind about where to be because the lanes were just not that clearly defined. So, I think I will use it more, but I don't think I'm going to be too precious about disengaging. Like if there's anybody near me, like if the road's completely empty and there's nobody around, sure, I'll just let it figure itself out. But, I get very self-conscious about looking like an idiot. So, I'm going to keep using it, but I'm going to happily disengage when it drives like a fool.
All right, let's give some people some history here. This is software for your Tesla Model 3. It is, you paid for full self-driving upgrade to that software. So you have all the cameras and sensors you need. You're just paying for the right to use that software. And finally, as a Canadian, you finally got that right. They started to roll it out, a month ago or so. And now
in Canada,
they're giving it to people with safety scores. Your safety score was 98, 99, right? Usually?
Yeah. And it's been 98. And actually, since I got the software, the safety score has actually disappeared on the app. So I don't have to worry about my safety score anymore.
It's not your fault, Brian. It's not your fault.
It's not even there. I can't even check it.
Yeah.
It's the kind of thing where, I've watched a lot of the videos on YouTube, so I was already fairly familiar with how it works. But I think that now that I've got it, it's kind of like another hobby that I don't really want or need.
Yeah.
It's super fun and it's super cool, but I don't think I'm going to be using it every day because it's basically makes driving more difficult because you have to be extra vigilant. You have to pay extra attention because you're never sure what the car is going to do, and you have to be prepared to take control again. So, I'll just use it occasionally for fun, and hopefully it improves and gets better, and, it'll eventually get more relaxing.
And yeah, again, for our new listeners, this is software that allows the car to drive itself with supervision. In your case, you have to keep your hands on the wheel. And in some other GM products, you have to just have it monitors your eyeballs and where they're looking. So, yeah, it's, and you have to intervene, and you have to be ready to intervene. You can't get complacent. Plus, this is the first time that it's been where we live in this city. So that's going to take some learning. So the data will be sent to Tesla. Every intervention will be sent to Tesla. They'll look at the video, assuming you opted in for that, or do you even have a choice when you're doing the beta? You must have to give them that, right? And then they'll feed it into the computer, and the AI will learn our unique Canadian roads, which have some subtleties to them, apparently, according to Musk, and it'll learn our city. So that's interesting. And
and I have one specific example that I do want it to learn. Again, very near my house, there's a school zone, and they recently updated the school zones in our city. And so as you enter the school zone, it says 30 kilometers an hour. It's normally 50.
Yeah.
So you slow down to 30 kilometers an hour. But as you leave the school zone, it doesn't have another speed sign that says 50. Right. It just has another sign that says school zone ends. So the car, even before the software update and now with the software update, does not understand that sign yet.
Yeah, there's so many complicated things like that are nuanced between places. For instance, around most of the city, they actually do say 50 kilometers per hour at the end of the school zone now. They never used to. You used to have to, when I learned how to drive in 1984 or something, you had to look for where the other sign facing the other way was, because that was the start, right. Which is kind of stupid, I mean, to be fair. But yeah, and another thing is, I live on a boulevard, and they paint those freaking lines the second the snow melts.
Really?
And nobody drives on my street. It's a dead end. It's like a kilometer stretch of street, or maybe a bit more than that, a mile long.
It's not very busy.
That doesn't go anywhere. It's just in this little burb section of the city, and they just decided not to continue it when they designed it. And yeah, it's just they're always doing the lines, and they'll come and they'll street sweep for 2 days so they can paint the lines in the spring. And the road that you quoted is also a boulevard that is heavily trafficked, that actually goes somewhere. I use it, hell.
No, and they do not bother to paint the lines.
What is your thoughts, though, on full self-driving beta, now that you've tried it sometimes?
Well, I was surprised by the indecisiveness. I think that's the main thing. Like I said, it's the car wasn't quite sure what to do. And the fact that it would kind of it would change its mind. It would start to go one way, and then it would start to go the other way, and then start to go one way because it just wasn't sure where the lane was. So that surprised me a bit. And I think that most cities have better defined lanes. They have better painted lanes. We're particularly bad in that way.
Right. And yeah, it makes it hard because it snows here. It's cold. They put a lot of sand, and they have to clean the sand and salt and stuff like that on the roads in the wintertime. The winter's long.
Yeah, we're, plus 40 Celsius in the summer, minus 40 Celsius in the winter. That's basically the most extreme temperature change of pretty much anywhere on the planet. And it does wreak havoc on the roads and on the painted lines.
So you know what my son does for his summer job? He goes around with an iPad in pairs and looks at and gives grades to the streets that he's assigned.
Oh.
He grades the streets for different things in different parts of the city.
That sounds like a great job.
It is a great job. He's even getting exercise. He says, I walk more than any human being on earth. And I said, that's very unlikely. But he said some other people have clocked 18 kilometers. But it's a very easy job. He gets paid well, and he's got every third Friday off. And his resume is padded. And they give it to engineering students. And he initially didn't get the job and didn't have a backup plan. But like many jobs that hire a number of people, one of them or multiples of them got a better offer somewhere, or maybe they're backpacking through Europe instead, and he got bumped up at the last second. So he's a lucky devil. He'll probably never have a crappy job, Brian. I mean, he did a part-time stint at a grocery store last year, but they treated him really well. And, it was a union job.
Yeah, well, hopefully the timing is good as myself and the older baby boomers retire. Hopefully the job market is improving for the kids today.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I certainly missed out on it. Oh, well, that's okay. I'm a podcaster now. Look at me. I've got a microphone outside the house. No one has that. Does Mark Maron have that? Does Joe Rogan have that? No. That is live birds right now. I mean, if anything were to happen, I'd have the audio of it right here. Live.
Yeah. Like that Brian De Palma movie, Blowout. You could accidentally record a murder.
Ooh. And then we could become one of those murder podcasts, that are very popular.
Then we'd be rolling in the dough. That would be amazing.
Absolutely. The sponsors would be knocking down the door then.
Yeah. So, and then next week I wanted to mention I'm actually going to be on the road. I'm actually going to be in Banff, Alberta, the Rocky Mountains of Canada next week.
Arguably the most beautiful place in Canada.
Arguably. So I will be podcasting next week from a hotel room in Banff. I'm hoping to get like a view out the window or something of the mountains, but, I don't know if I'll be that lucky.
That would be cool. You'd need a bright light to compensate, or we'd have to shoot it at twilight or something.
Yeah, well, I might have to pack this giant light with me. We'll see.
The thing is, I know you will, and I applaud your dedication to the art, really.
Yeah, well, we will be driving the Tesla, which has a fair amount of room for luggage and stuff, so I think I do have room to throw that in, and so it will be an electric car road trip, westward here towards Alberta, so that'll be fun.
So that is the Banff International Television Festival, right?
Yeah.
And will you be participating at all yourself, or
no?
Just tagging along?
My partner's participating. I'm just along for the ride and just to enjoy the scenery.
Maybe some hikes or something like that. See how the full self-driving Beta handles the mountains.
See if it can recognize
bears.
May
have to intervene on certain passes. That would be bad.
Yeah.
Brian, something extraordinary happened to me this week, and I was quite upset about it at first, quite worked up about it. You see, I never leave home, ever.
Very rarely.
Ever.
It's true.
I never go to stores. I haven't been to a store in months. But my tap to my garden hose was leaking, and I was working on it, realized I needed a washer. So I went to the local hardware store, which is the Co-op Home Center. It's like a big hardware store, like a home building hardware store that's very close to me, right between me and the refinery. It's actually owned by the refinery. That is 2.5 kilometers away.
Right.
And my son has been spouting knowledge about lead in the refinery pollution every day, so I'm not very happy about that. And he wondered if he was stupid because of it. And I said, no, just a few IQ points because we moved here when you were like 10, so it's not a big deal. Anyway, I went to my first store, and because they had decided never to open in the evenings anymore about a year ago, earlier on in the pandemic, roughly a year ago, they'd never done that. But then they changed their mind, and now they're open in the evenings, but nobody knows that. So I was the only person in the store. Mm-hmm. I walk into the store, into the washer department, find my washer, and what do I hear through my ears? Somebody saying the following statement: actually, electric cars cost way more to fill up than a gas car. I look over to the cashier, which is within range. I position myself closer, standing with my mouth agape inside a mask. And the guy is telling this cashier, who reminded me of the wife in No Country for Old Men. It's just, these people are not the brain surgeons who work in these stores because they're lifers. This isn't a part-time job for them. This is their career. And I have occasionally encountered ridiculous conversations in the store, but I was the only one there. It was the first store I went to. I was just going for a washer, and that's what I hear. Isn't that weird? I mean, what are the odds of that? What is God telling me?
It's like somebody was stalking you just to annoy you.
It's almost like somebody's making a TV show to annoy James, a hidden camera TV show. So I engaged him. My blood boiled, and I engaged. Now, I'm not an outgoing person. I'm an introvert.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes something clicks, and I just will talk to anyone about anything, and I got worked up about it. And it wasn't an argument, but I was worked up, and he was worked up. And I said, actually, no, that's not true. And he said, yes, it is. I said, no, it's not. I said, look, because my car was parked right outside the window. I said, that's my electric car. I know how much it costs to fill. I have friends with electric cars. I'm an EV advocate. I know this. And he says, no, you're wrong. He says, my brother owns a Tesla. He lives in Vancouver, and he says it costs way more. And he wishes he had his Prius back.
In Vancouver, it costs half.
Even less.
To charge
the cheapest
than what it does
electricity
here.
in the world is in Vancouver, pretty much. It's practically free.
Now, I will mention that they have raised the prices at the Tesla superchargers in Canada. So at the superchargers, it's not dirt cheap like it used to be, $5-6 for a charge. And now it's more like $10-12 for a charge. So at the superchargers.
Yeah.
But that's versus a tank of gas, which would be $50, $60, $70.
Oh, the Prius is $55 to fill now. It used to be $35.
Yeah.
My son, with his very old 20-year-old Honda Civic, is not very happy paying a record like $85 last week.
Yikes.
Which I hear about all the time. Gas prices just broke $2 a liter in our city. So he says, yeah, even though with the gas prices the way it is, way more to fill up an electric car. Holy bloody hell, is he full of shite. That's so wrong. It cost me $2.80 to fill up my car. A Chevy Bolt would cost $8.80. The most a car, the pickup trucks would cost about $14 to fill.
Mm-hmm.
And that never changes. It's always the same.
But this is something that I thought most people did know, because especially since gas lately is so expensive, I kind of assumed that even people who don't understand EVs would understand that part is cheaper.
No, the thing is, Brian, he wanted to believe this.
Yeah.
He so wanted to believe this, and he was so happy about it, because he grew up fixing drag cars.
Mm-hmm.
He's a drag car guy. So he's really into combustion. He's a gearhead.
Yeah.
And that's fine. I said, that's fine. You be a gearhead for the rest of your life. And the woman says that the cashier, he says, my husband really likes the loud noise of the mufflers and the smell of the gasoline. And I said, well, they can make that noise fake and he can just huff a rag while he drives of gasoline on it, which was a rude thing to say, but it came out of my ass. It came out of my mouth. And it's true. Well, you can't like the smell of gasoline. That's not a smell you're allowed to like because it's not healthy.
No,
it's really unhealthy. It's bad. Yeah, he fixes drag cars. He showed me pictures. He says Teslas at airports everywhere are running out of battery, and that's a big problem for them. So he latched onto a story of a Tesla that probably had its cameras on or something.
Probably had Sentry mode on, although Sentry mode does shut off when you get down to 20%.
It just was so infuriating. Yeah.
So it sounds like you did not convince him by the end of the conversation.
Actually, I think I did. A little bit. He just didn't believe me. He says, my brother, he also has a Honda Prius, which is wrong. It's a Toyota Prius. And he used to drive that. But he came back at Christmas time. He said, I wish I drove the Prius. Because, now, granted, it was cold at Christmas. And you're going to spend twice as long charging because everything works slower. The batteries doesn't hold as much.
I'm definitely going to rethink minus 40 road trips in the future with the Tesla, for sure.
And that I get. But to say that by and large it costs, it's not even close.
It's not even close, especially in BC.
It's not even close. It's not comparable. Even in normal times, it's not even close, let alone now. My God. And I said, you can figure it out for yourself because a car, and you can do this yourself if you're shopping for a car, a car has a battery, and that's the main thing you look for in the car. And it'll say, in my case, it was 24 kilowatts.
Kilowatt hours.
Technically kilowatt hours, but you could just say 24 kilowatts. That's the size of the battery, or 24 kilowatt hours. Yours is what, 60, 65?
Mine's 50.
50, okay. And the trucks are around 100. Maybe some are a bit more than 100.
Yeah.
So that's about as big as they get. So 100, let's say you've got a pickup truck that's 100 kilowatt hour battery, and it does 313 miles of range or something, and that's like whatever it is. And then if your electricity, if you look at your bill and it says 14 cents a kilowatt, that's how much you just times that by 100, and then it's $1, it's $14 rather.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. Like there's no mystery to it.
Yeah.
It's just, that's what it is to charge at home. If you can't charge at home, then yeah, it's more. If you're on the highway, yes, it's more, and it can be a lot.
Yeah. Mine's 50 kilowatt hours times 14 cents, which is $7. For a full charge at home, it's $7.
And that gets you 400 kilometers on average, according
Roughly,
to the EPA, or a little bit more than that. And if you have an 800 kilometer car, my Prius does 800 kilometers with the right tires, the original tires. It doesn't anymore because we switched the tires to cheapos. But then you would just double it,
Mm-hmm.
You would say my car has an 800 kilometer range, so it's going to be, twice that, which is not much. It's still nothing. It's compared to what gasoline costs. So if you compare the Prius to my son's car, is similar, it's bigger than my son's car, but let's say it's in the same economy car range, then it's going to be, factored out the gasoline and everything, it would probably cost about $10 to fill for the same range compared to his $85 right now. So that's a big difference. It's almost a tenth. I mean, in Vancouver, it would be a tenth, right? Yeah. I mean, it's just their gas is more expensive and their electricity is cheaper because they've got all this hydropower in the mountains and the water there.
Yeah.
And electricity prices do vary from across the land. Another thing, though, is if we don't have it, but if we get time of day pricing and we can charge our cars overnight during off-peak hours at, say, half that, then it's half that. Because why wouldn't you charge it overnight? There's no reason not to.
No, if we end up switching to that here, it'll probably drop for me from $7 down to maybe 2, maybe 3.
And Ontario's looking at an option to do 3 cents.
Yeah.
Which would be not even worth talking about.
Yeah,
it would be
basically
so cheap.
Free. It's basically free.
But the point is that people out there want to believe something. They want to believe. And they said, you also brought up power. It doesn't have enough power. So I pointed out the horsepower because we had just talked about it on our show last week of the F-150 being like 538 horsepower or something.
No, and this is a guy who would understand horsepower numbers.
Yeah, he would. And boy, he shut up. But you know what? The nice thing he said was he liked the look of my car. Because my 2013 Nissan Leaf is an odd-looking car and it doesn't have a lot of love even when it came out.
Yeah.
He liked it. So I said, well, thanks, but I'll take it.
So it didn't come to blows then?
No, it didn't. But I left, in a huff, and he was in a bit of a huff. And we had a long conversation, and he finally felt compelled to go back to work. And anyway, so Toyota, moving on, has unveiled that they are going to come up with a home battery pack. Toyota, of all people, to compete with the Tesla Powerwall. It's envisioned for normal usage, which is off-peak electricity, that is charging up, like we said, at night when it's cheap, and then using that electricity during when it costs you the most money, when people come home from work, the peak times, and support of solar panels, charge up with the solar panels and EV charging and that sort of thing, and an electric emergency electric outage kind of source too. So caused by natural disasters or, a bolt of lightning or a pigeon sometimes. And the battery capacity for these suckers, Brian, is 8.7 kilowatt hours. And the power output is about 5.5, which should power a house nicely, fully. And the press release we got says they do not know whether there is an option to combine multiple units like you can with the Tesla. You can put several Teslas Some people have.
Yeah, and we've heard these kinds of announcements from other car makers as well. So I guess all the car makers have pretty much decided that they're now in the home energy business, which is fine.
And that's good. I mean, the F-150 is the biggest example as they start to hit the streets now, and you have an option to buy a package that powers your home, which is awesome. And the PG&E executive said this week about the F-150 Lightning extended range. He said the extended range Lightning's 131 kilowatt hour pack, which is huge, boasts almost 10 times the capacity of a Tesla Powerwall. And, that's like an $11,000 option in the States, the Powerwall. So you get that with your truck. You are paying a few $1,000s to get it installed and everything and to have the whole thing work. But the point is, the Tesla Powerwall doesn't drive you to the grocery store. That was his point. And I don't know why people have to take trucks to the grocery store, but they sure like to.
Yeah.
Brian, speaking of, crashes and the potential, did you see the Model X crash that we had nearby that was on our Facebook page? Did you watch that?
Yeah, this was, I think, like one of the early Model X's, like a 2018, and local person, and just got it totaled.
What did you think of the accident? It was covered by all angles, by the way, because Tesla cameras have, everywhere.
I just had a quick look. It looked like there was the light was turning yellow. It was on the way to turning red. So
I wonder if self-driving would have avoided it, is my question.
Oh, probably, yeah.
So what was happening is he was going down a two-lane street and somebody was coming the other way that would cross in front of him. There was a car in his left lane that was first, and that's the only car that person paid attention to. And then he hit this young woman in the car, and she was quite shaken up but not hurt. And the point is also that, he had free supercharging for life.
Oh,
and he's lost that now. So I don't think insurance, he's going to have to arbitrate that with insurance if he has any chance of having that covered.
No, and that's been an issue sometimes with full self-driving as well, that the insurance companies are not necessarily well-versed in that extra charge. And when you pay for full self-driving, it stays with the car. So if you don't get it paid out from insurance, you've kind of lost that money.
I should point out that no one was hurt in either vehicle. However, he had children in the back seat of this minivan like X, and the airbag did bruise one of his children. And, because every airbag in the vehicle seemed to go off, and it looks like it's totaled, which is too bad. I feel, and I hope this person isn't listening, but a lot of people said, couldn't you stop? Because he didn't stop.
Right.
When I drive and when I teach my kids to drive, I say, be paranoid. It's like a video game where everyone's out to get you. You never know when they're going to do something. And so I never trust anyone. I always look, and I drive right down. I've avoided accidents that way over my lifetime. But I feel like I would have seen that person creep forward and at least hit the brakes and maybe not totaled the car.
Yeah, I mean, hard to say without being there, but... And
also, where was the full, the emergency braking? I have that in the Toyota, and I expect that it would... It's supposed to brake. It's not supposed to avoid the crash, but it's supposed to avoid the impact, the level of the crash.
Although it's possible the brakes did come on, but just not in time or something.
Well, I didn't see anything black on the road, because you could look behind. I didn't see any brake dust, just debris. So... I always wonder, how the hell do accidents happen? How do they happen? Like, what's going on? If I had a police officer handy, I would say, well, what is the cause of these things? And I guess it's not paying attention. You just let it slip for one moment, and that's enough to...
Yeah, that's all it takes.
All right, well, let's get on with the show.
Okay, so an announcement from Mazda, or Mazda, as it's said in other parts of the world. This story is from Electrek. Mazda has vowed to make their factories net zero by 2035. And I wanted to talk about this because it's the type of announcement that we actually hear a lot around us where we live here in oil country is, they're talking about making the production of, say the oil sands oil. They're trying to make the production of that oil net zero, but it's the same problem as what Mazda is doing here. They're talking about making their factories net zero, but they're still talking about continuing to make combustion vehicles well into the 2030s. They have not made a lot of strides, Mazda. We the Japanese automakers, we have mentioned on the show, they're definitely a little bit behind in terms of switching over to electric. But it's an announcement about the factories going net zero, but they're still planning to make combustion cars. It's just kind of crazy.
Yeah, I saw a story today about offshore oil rigs off of England using, installing wind to power them or
Right,
something,
yeah.
like, yeah, but really,
I mean, I guess it's better than not doing it, but
I guess, but it doesn't make the product okay. It doesn't mean we should keep burning it. Oh my God, Brian, we have to stop burning fossil fuels. We are at a critical time right now when people are greenwashing the hell out of us.
yeah.
And we have to be vigilant and not put up with it. And we have to divest from oil and gas completely.
And I think really this is what the announcement from Mazda is about. And it's what, when we hear announcements like this from the oil sands, from the oil producers, that's really what it's about. It can make the kind of headline where if you just kind of glance at the headline and don't pay too much attention, you kind of think, oh, good for you, Mazda. You're making some strides.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not.
And the oil refinery 2.5 kilometers away from me, as I've said before, has a plan to be net zero by 2050.
Yeah.
But we can't burn what you're selling at 2050 or the planet is done. I mean, done. It's not even an option. The only thing we can burn is a couple of yahoos with, combustion vehicles that are burning hopefully greener fuels in the future. And they can do their drag racing and such. Brian, I've got a really good news story that turned really sour about an hour before the show. And that is that I'm looking for an electric vehicle, don't have a lot of money, was looking for the Chevy Bolt when they were ramping up production again after their big recall for their batteries. And in the United States, congratulations to you, United States, because they are dropping prices by something, significant, almost several $1,000s in the States, basically at 17% off. See, they just did a big price cut for the 2022 model year, which was great. Like, was $5,000, $6,000 off in the States and $5,000 in Canada. And currently, the Bolt without destination fees like $38,000 in Canada. If that translated to Canada, where James lives and would want to buy one, that would be $38,000 minus $5,000 from the federal government minus $7,000 of new pricing, and that'd be $26,000. That'd be $2,000 less than a Prius, which is the car we've been buying and rebuying for the past decade or so. And it would be a no-brainer then, right? I mean, no-brainer. It'd be even cheaper.
Yes.
But the bastards are not lowering the price by even a penny in Canada because, GM Authority, the website that covers GM, says that the pricing for the 2023 GM Bolt EV in Canada will start at the usual price, not a penny different. So I'm mad, and I'm kind of thinking, why should I support them? Maybe I should go elsewhere or wait.
Well, that's unfortunate, but I guess they must think that they have enough demand in Canada at the current price. I know in BC, British Columbia, electric car sales are really taking off, so they can probably sell everything they've got in BC and in Quebec. So they just don't care about you, James.
No doubt. And, it pisses me off because I was hoping to sneak it in before other people caught on, with gas prices the way they are. But it's not working out that way. They say that their portfolio pricing has a competitive EV landscape in Canada. No need to change anything. And in the States, they need to be competitive. Well, your cars all went on fire and you had to really screw people over. Maybe you ought to give us a cut in price too. Or maybe, I'm hopeful that maybe there'll be some deep discounts, some sales, some financing deals or something, 0% or something like that. We'll see. But I mean, I found it kind of weird timing because they are going to sell a lot of these suckers. They are the most affordable EVs there are. You don't get the $7,000 off in the States from the federal government because they used up all their credits. GM did. which makes kind of like the Leaf the best deal, the cheapest EV you can get, more or less, because they still have some credits left, but that's going to run out pretty fast, and they're releasing an SUV EV soon. So, and I don't recommend the Leaf. You know, I'm part of the Leaf forums too, as well as the Bolt, and people with new Leafs are having battery degradation that I don't care for. It seems to be like the old battery degradation. And these aren't even people who are doing a lot of supercharging. So I don't like, you know, my battery never gets hot here where we live, even on hot summer days. But I don't know, the chemistry is just not as good in their batteries.
Well, we're still waiting for the Nissan Ariya to be kind of fully released. The stories recently were that they've stopped taking orders for them because they're basically sold out for the next year. But it kind of remains to be seen how good a car that will be.
Yeah, anytime a company releases its first major EV beyond, say, the Leaf, which was very niche and nobody buys cars anymore, then all those Nissan loyalists are going to jump on board. Plus, all the Leaf owners wanted something bigger. They just couldn't get it. And now they're going to jump on to the Ariya, too. I'm not so sure about the Ariya. It does have, you know, active heating and cooling, but, you know, I'm just very disappointed. To you people in the States, which is most of our listeners, congratulations. You can go get a Bolt. Hell, get two of them. They're going to be dirt cheap. And the fact that you can run them very cheaply, good luck. You know, I was reading an account by an American Uber driver who was getting 667 kilometers of range on his Bolt in the city, hypermiling, just driving gently. And, you know, I mean, if you're a gig economy worker using a vehicle, you make more money with an electric car, and it's probably worth it just for the payments. You know, you're probably making money just by going out and spending the money to get one. And it's only, you know, the EPA rates it a mix of highway and city at 417, but you can, in the summertime when it's not too hot or not too cold, you're not using heat or air. Some people have got an incredible amount of range out of those vehicles in stop and go traffic. So, yeah. Anyway, Brian, I'm sad after being quite happy. So,
okay. Well, I guess the search continues for James and an electric car. So we've got a couple more stories here from the United States, and this is to do with the solar industry. So there's been a kind of a dispute going on in the U.S. solar industry. There was a company that complained about something to do with, you know, importing solar panels. So there's Joe Biden, the president of the U.S., has waived the tariffs that were in place on solar panels for the next couple of years. So this is good news for solar installers. This will allow more solar panels into the U.S. for the next couple of years while they work out whatever this complaint was in terms of, international commerce for solar panels.
Well, I'm reading a lot of people in the solar industry saying this is huge news. This is a big deal because this will, and it affects the world. When something happens in the States, it affects the world. So the solar industry was getting, you know, had their feet taken out from underneath them. And now it's going to be completely reversed and they're going to go gangbusters, which is going to bring down the price of solar. And then, you know, that helps the rest of the world too, because the more it comes down in the States, the more it comes down everywhere in a big country like that. So that's, you know, some things that Biden does is a bit of a mystery to me, but it seems like his environmental team is on board. I don't see him coming up with this stuff himself, but he's got a good team.
Yeah, and there's a companion story to that, which is the Biden administration slashes rent by 50% on U.S. public land for wind and solar. So another big policy change that can help spur the development of wind and solar. And he also talked about using the Defense Production Act as well to further solar production, which is something we've talked about lately in terms of a lot of this kind of stuff, like heat pumps and so forth. Yeah. It's a lot of good news for that industry.
Yeah, they need to get on board with heat pumps really quick because the faster that happens, the faster the prices come down and the faster, you know, they're a little behind wind and solar, I would say. So I just wanted to talk about fake meats like plant-based meats because we talk about that a lot on the show. And the thesis that we have on the show is that it's going to come down and displace actual meat because it's actually going to be cheaper than regular meat. And the younger people are, the more likely they are not to want to eat an animal. So I'm kind of agnostic on this. I would prefer to be a vegetarian, but I don't also have the ethical fortitude to not eat meat at this point in my life. But here we are. CBC had a story saying that fake meats were tanking mostly due to higher costs, and it's still highly ranked on their website, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation's national news site, because people like to hear it. This is another one of those stories. People around here got mad at the A&W fast food company for serving fake meat.
Yeah.
It's kind of ridiculous, and they were threatened by it, obviously. So they grew, fake meats grew 13% in 2019 and almost 40% in 2020, and then they just sort of leveled off. The major producers were just 4% last year in 2021. Now, a lot of people will say that it's the supply and demand issues affected them as well. I don't know exactly how. There's no microchips, I hope, in these things, but pricing, things, the inflation is going up, so people stop buying expensive stuff because it's more expensive than regular meat. We don't buy it very often because of the price. But I did have some good sausage the other day. We have sausage with some of the meals that we have on a regular basis, and we had fake sausage, and I liked it. It was more consistent, it was not unpredictable, and I didn't get a piece of bone.
Yeah, it's true. Sausage could be unpredictable.
And nobody likes to eat sausage if you think about it.
Don't think too hard.
Suspend your disbelief anytime you eat sausage. Maple Leaf as one of the Canadian meat packing companies, they had a big space in their factory for plant-based meats, and they put that back to regular meat again to the delight of people who don't like to see the world change. And the idea is that plant-based meats don't have as much carbon, especially in beef.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big...
No, if we all switched to plant-based meats, it would definitely be friendlier for the planet.
Or even just, some of the time. Yeah. We had figures on the shows before where it makes a huge difference. So they still think that the business is on track to getting to be $10 billion within the decade, but that's less than half of what they were anticipating before. So I'm not so sure. I think that people will, once the price hits parity, which it has in some respects, in some fast food places, for instance, that people are just going to say, screw it, I want the plant-based. I've really enjoyed some of the plant-based stuff more than burgers. I ate burgers because you have to.
No, I feel like this is a temporary setback. If I ever go to A&W, I always order the Beyond Meat burger. I think that's a great...
And it's delicious.
Yeah, but, the availability of that, I would probably buy that, instead of ground beef at the grocery store, I would buy some Beyond Meat ground beef, but I don't see it there.
Just going to check on the outdoor audio again. I hear some kids, Brian. That's different. Could be the schoolyard across the street. I think it's recess.
So it's pointed toward the school, the microphone?
Well, it's picking it up. The side of the house is like a big flat surface that picks up everything. So, and it's not that far away. And they can sort of come towards the house. So you've got a story.
Okay, so not too long ago, we spoke on the program about deep water cooling, which is used in the city of Toronto here in Canada. I love this. It's a great project that's been going on for 20 years. A lot of the high rises in downtown Toronto are cooled by the super cold water that's found at the bottom of Lake Ontario. And came across another story here from City News in Toronto. This is a kind of a similar innovation that's happening in Toronto, and it's Toronto Western Hospital, which is harvesting the heat from wastewater to heat and cool the building. So we have a clip.
In what's being called groundbreaking, a Toronto hospital and its partners have found an environmentally friendly way of heating and cooling its buildings.
We're going to be drilling a hole here that's 35 feet wide, 165 feet deep, 5 feet below the Midtown Interceptor sewer, and it's going to be allowing us to tap into the wastewater, which we will then use with our proprietary Huber technology to then provide heating and cooling to Toronto Western Hospital.
As near as I can tell, this is very much like a ground source heat pump where you just, dig into the earth. And once you get down a certain level, there's always a certain amount of heat and you can harvest that heat. But they're just doing this near basically the sewer. It's heating with wastewater, which sounds disgusting, but it's doesn't actually touch the wastewater.
Right.
It just goes near the sewer. And it's probably just a more efficient type of ground source heat pump, because they're not just getting the kind of ambient temperature that would normally be down deep in the earth. They're getting the little extra temperature that is with the sewer water. There's constantly, sewer water running through there, and they're using that with a heat pump. They're harvesting it, and they're going to heat the hospital with it. It's amazing.
So 15 years ago, I was fascinated by the the drain heat pumps, not the drain water recovery.
Yeah.
So you'd have the copper pipes that go to your hot water heater coiled around your drain. So as you took a shower, the warm water would preheat the water going into the water heater, and you would save electricity that way. And they're available at Home Depot and places, and fairly easy to install plumbing wise, and don't take up any extra room. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. If you build a house, if you build a cottage, maybe you should consider that when you do your cottage.
No, we are kind of, I think, thinking about that. There's, the idea of just a gray water system, first of all, where you don't have to have drinking water in your, toilets and bathrooms.
This could be a 20-year project.
Yeah, this could take a while.
You think you don't want to think about things. This is a big thing a lot of things to think about when an eco house.
But yeah, it's the same kind of principle. I mean, there's, heat that is normally just being wasted. And, but, with the proper technology, you can harvest that and, emissions-free heating, cooling for buildings. Amazing. Okay, so we have another audio clip here. This comes from CHCH Television in Hamilton. James, do you know what CHCH Television is famous for?
The show Hilarious House of Frankenstein.
Yes, exactly. This story is from them, but it's I love it because it reminds me of, you always hear those stories about somebody goes to a garage sale and, they buy a painting and they find out it's a Van Gogh or something and it's worth millions of dollars. My favorite one is Ansel Adams, the famous photographer. Somebody went to a yard sale, bought this box of glass negatives, and it turned out it was the early work of Ansel Adams. He shot his first stuff on glass negatives, and everyone thought these were lost. Somebody bought them, for $20 at a yard sale and made millions of dollars. Anyway, this is a similar story, but it has to do with synthetic graphite, which is needed and used for making batteries. So we have a clip.
We have a history of buying former industrial sites, remediating them, cleaning them up, knocking down the old buildings, and building new construction on.
His company bought the abandoned Union Carbide land in Welland 6 years ago, and he accidentally uncovered a forested-over landfill jam-packed with finished synthetic graphite. You know the saying, one person's trash is another person's treasure? Well, Union Carbide didn't know what to do with some of its leftover synthetic graphite, so it dumped it right here, about 500,000 tons of it. Well, decades later, it now has a use, and it is not cheap. Graphite, specifically synthetic graphite, is a major part of electric vehicle batteries. Assuming there's about 500,000 tons of graphite here, at a current value of about $14,000 a ton, these mounds of what look like dirt could be worth upwards of $7 billion.
Wow.
Yeah. So thanks to our friend.
That's a lot.
Thanks to our friend Don, who pointed this out to me on Twitter. But $7 billion worth of synthetic graphite. This is in Welland, Ontario, former industrial site. They had no use at the time for synthetic graphite, but now it's one of those materials that is extremely in demand and often comes from China, but now we have it here in our backyard.
Well, it is time for the lightning round. In fact, it's beyond time for the lightning round.
The Clean Energy Show lightning round.
Brian, you have a story from the nice people at Apple.
So yeah, there was a big Apple keynote yesterday where they unveiled a lot of their new products. And for the next iteration of the iOS, mobile iPhone software, they're working on really expanding Apple CarPlay, which of course you use in most cars that are available these days. to increase the functionality of your car. But it seems like Apple's really trying to go after the car software market. And as we've kind of figured out that, this is something Tesla really has a lead in, is in-car software. They're very much a software company, and they started working on car software many, many years ago. And the rest of the automakers are really playing catch up in terms of car software. We know Volkswagen has had a lot of delays with their electric cars because of the, operating system and stuff. So this might be where all of that Apple car development kind of went to. We haven't heard too much about Apple's physical car that they're going to make, and they, may never make one. But the next version of Apple CarPlay is a much more advanced operating system for the car. It's something that they'll have to work with the manufacturers to implement, because it involves really putting the Apple interface on all the screens in a car. So there's not just the main screen, but the one, with the speedometer in the future will basically be run by Apple, or at least you'll have the choice of having your speedometer run by Apple. So I thought that was definitely an interesting development for the future of cars.
I hope they don't serve advertisements new in iTunes this week. Tom Cruise and his airplane. Ford is providing an adapter to charge stranded Tesla vehicles with their F-150 Lightning. It sounds like they're pulling a bit of an Elon trolling thing here. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah, that was a bit of a surprise announcement that they've included a Tesla adapter, so the F-150 Lightning electric pickup can provide power to other things, and they threw in a Tesla adapter. So it's weird because, it's not that often that, electric cars run out of charge.
Tesla is aiming to improve service and make a majority of appointments same-day repairs. That's interesting. That would make it a pleasure to deal with that situation.
Well, that's a fantastic goal. I don't know if they'll be able to do it because a lot of it depends on parts, and but they've always been kind of parts constrained in terms of repairs. So hopefully they can do that. We'll see.
China's EV automaker Geely is launching its first satellites to help drive their autonomous vehicle ambitions. What do you think the satellites are used for with autonomous vehicles, Brian? I don't know.
Well, I don't know. They could probably look into your backyard and hear what your microphone is listening to.
Here's my backyard now. Seems like recess has really taken off. And satellites looking down through the clouds from China. Okay. Well, we are really over time, but I will say this. The heat pump market is said to double to $13 billion in cold climates by 2031. Obviously, cold climates are where the heat pump market is going to expand the most, right?
Yeah, and I'm still, looking for a solution to heat my home here with either a ground source or air source heat pump. So I'm really waiting for this to take off so I have more options.
All right. That is way more than our time for this week. We truly love to hear from our listeners. Anything on your mind, contact us by email, maybe, cleanenergyshow@gmail.com. That's cleanenergyshow@gmail.com. Our handle on TikTok and Twitter is cleanenergypod, one word. Don't forget to check out our YouTube channel as usual. You can leave us a voicemail at speakpipe.com/cleanenergyshow. Rate and review our show wherever you listen to us on your favorite app. It helps us. And if you're new to the show, subscribe. Subscribe to get new shows every week. I don't know how we do it, Brian. How do we show up every week for our listeners? But we do. Even when you're going to Banff next week. So we'll see everyone next week from Banff, Alberta, or at least my backyard in Banff, Alberta.
Yeah, see you next week.